I ghosted my fiancée after she asked for an open relationship. Before marriage, I have rewritten this a few times in an attempt to shorten it, but our history goes back. Since we were kids, I'm looking for some advice as to what I should do when I get home in 2 days. I'm changing all names. Obviously, I'm very sorry for the length of this monster. Jen and I had been friends since we were kids. Our parents were lifelong friends. We grew up together and started dating in our teens. It was almost expected by our families. They had more plans for us than we did. When I was going for my master's, I had to move to another city, and Jen remained in our hometown, working on her nursing degree. After a year of long-distance relationship, we decided to remain friends and not let the pressure of our relationship control us. We both remained best friends, and we both dated other people. It was weird because we both always knew this was temporary and that we would end up back together at some point. I graduated and stayed in the city. I got my master's and started working in my field. I waited for a transfer back to my hometown, and when I got it, I was so happy. Jen was in a long-term relationship, and he was a nice fellow, but I always got the feeling he was weary of our friendship. I understood the vibe and stepped back out of respect. Although she and I would talk several times a year, my boss and mentor, whom I will call Paul, a 44-year-old male, was a great guy, and we became good friends. He taught me the ropes, and one day he came down from the ivory tower and wanted to talk. He explained there was an open position in a foreign city for 2 years, and it would be advertised shortly. He explained the position, and even though the money wasn't huge, all expenses such as rent, hotel, and travel-related expenses were covered. Basically, I would be based in Tokyo and have to travel once in a while to other Asian cities for a few days here and there. I thought about it and talked to my friends and parents. Paul said it was a position that would be a great opportunity to prove myself and climb the ladder. I thought, why not? I could save most of my salary and gain valuable experience. Paul said he would speak to the old man, and if I wanted it, he would recommend me. He explained he himself did something similar years ago, and it helped his career. So off I went. The first year was horrible, getting used to the culture and social rules, not only in Japan but in the other countries I would visit for work. One thing that surprised me was how available women were everywhere I went. They loved foreigners, and I got to sample the delights of the Orient. These weren't third-world women. Most of them were highly educated. I had many friends with benefits and clearly told all of them I wasn't interested in long-term relationships or marriage, as I was only staying temporarily. I ended up doing 2 more years. Paul would visit several times a year on vacation or to supervise some work, and I will admit we had some crazy times in a few cities, like Angeles City, Philippines, and a few others. The contract was over, and I went back home and put a nice down payment on a house just outside the city. After living in a city of 37 million, I needed some space, lol. I was home for a month, and while visiting my parents, Jen was there. She and the other guy had broken up a year ago, and we started talking more seriously. Even though we always had contact over the years, we started dating again. I held off having sex as much as I wanted, because I was really afraid of what would happen. I had developed an addiction to having various partners while in Asia, and was trying to control the desire before Jen and I got serious. I mean, everyone, including Jen, knew I dated, but on social media, there would be infrequent photos of me with different women. My mother called me a whore a few times, and well, to be truthful, that kind of stung. Now is when things started to fall apart. Jen and I slept together, and for lack of a better word, she was very surprised. She said I was different, and that I was never like that before. She meant it like I had gained a lot of experience, to put it nicely. She asked me some questions, and I admit, I did trickle the truth to her. I didn't tell her the exact number, because even if it was divided by 3, it was scary. I had no doubt that I was, and could be, faithful to her, but the seed I inadvertently put in her mind that night would create some serious issues later. Now, of course, our families were thrilled we were together. It was always supposed to be this way. I went to sit at the table to talk to Jen. She starts by saying for me to not interrupt or freak out. She wants to talk about something. She then explains our difference in the bedroom and says she believes I wouldn't be satisfied with her, and eventually, I would cheat on her. She didn't want our future children and relationship to be ruined if I stray. So here I was thinking, great, I am about to get dumped. Just as I am thinking things can't get worse, I hear the infomercial guy in my head. But wait, there's more. Jen asks me if I am willing to open the relationship so she could gain more experience, and it would help her feel less insecure. She states I should not be worried as I am the only man she ever loved, and that's why none of her relationships had ever led to marriage. I did agree with her on that point, as I felt the same. Now, of course, I think this is a joke and she is not serious at all. This really can't be happening, right? Since this was a year and a half ago, I will try my best to recall the main points. She says she will only be with random people and never with someone we know or work with. It won't happen with the same person twice, and there will be no emotional connection. I was like, WTF, when I realized she wasn't joking. I lost my breath. I didn't think it was possible for a heart to skip a beat and jump to the center of my throat. I am not an angry or violent person, but now I am yelling. I am starting to understand why Tammy stuck around close by. I yelled, Tammy, did you put her up to this? Tammy says she is just there to support Jen. Wow, thanks so much. So then Jen says I am free to do as I wish under the same rules, and I said no. I am so pissed at this point, and even writing this, now I'm raging. I then said I don't want one-night stands, I just want one person. She says, who? I looked at Tammy and nodded in the eyes and said, I want to fuck Tammy. Now I get a rise out of Jen, and Tammy wasn't expecting that. She is a bit red in the face and now uncomfortable. Jen says no, she is family and someone we both know, and it's gross for me to even suggest it. I am now totally in bizarro world. Where the hell did this come from? We argued back and forth for a bit, and I told her if she does this, the relationship is over. I am totally against this, and I love her, and we can work through everything together. But not this. I stormed off, grabbed my pillow, and went to the guest room. I could hear them downstairs for a bit, but couldn't hear what they were saying. It would have been a hilarious joke if it didn't last for an hour of conversation. I didn't sleep all night and was a bag of shit at work. The next day, Jen started 2 weeks of night shift, so at least we wouldn't be home together for that time, and we could both cool down and revisit this later. Dinner would be in the fridge for me every day with an I love you note. She would text frequently, but I kept my answers short. Thursday night of the next week of her night shift, I went to the PC to work over some files, and I noticed an email notification on her account. It's a hotel reservation for a good hotel that's close to my office. I know it well, as I go often with coworkers. I am thinking she is supposed to be working, but maybe she wants to apologize and take me for a night out. The next morning, I am waiting for her text or call to invite me, but she only asks me how my day was. Then she says she's so happy. She only has to work one more night of the night shift. How does she have one more night in a hotel reservation? I was sick, stressing in my office, and started looking through some dating sites, especially profiles with no pics. I can't find anything. Paul pops in and asks me if I want to go for lunch and sees I'm a mess. He asks what's up, and I tell him all is hard, but he has always supported my relationship with Jen. He suggests we go get lunch at a hotel restaurant, and I scream, no, not that place. He didn't know that part. We actually go for lunch, and I'm sick to my stomach. I can't eat and don't even want to drink. He says I can't work like this, and I can take as much leave as I can, paid and unpaid, if needed. I told him I can't be there at my house anymore. I can't see her, and a part of me wants to believe it isn't true. I rush home, put as much of my shit. We wait for 10 minutes after she gets in the elevator, and Paul and I walk to the front desk. I ask the receptionist to put me through to Jen. Blank room, and it rings. As soon as she answered, I just started yelling into the receiver, and she sounded confused. Jen, I told you if you did this, that we would be over. I am done. Wedding off, relationship over. I hung up and got my eyes out of there. Now, where to go? I went back to Paul's, and now my phone is lighting up. The only person I called was my dad, and I explained in PG-rated terms what happened and that I needed to leave town for a bit. It wasn't a discussion, and I feel bad for how I spoke to my old man. The phone didn't stop for 2 days. Everyone under the sun called me, and I didn't answer. I didn't know what to do. The only way I could explain how I felt was like walking around underwater. Paul mentioned some financial things I should deal with to protect myself. I wasn't even thinking about that. The house, wedding, loans for the car. We kept separate accounts, one for the wedding and one for house-related bills. I couldn't care less. The next day, I emailed Jan and said this would be our last contact. I was leaving the city for a while, and the wedding and everything else was off. I called my dad back and spoke with him at length. While he was crushed, he understood I needed time and space, he said. He still hopes we could work it out. 10 days later, I boarded a plane and traveled to Bali. I never answered any of her or anyone's messages or emails. I don't know if she left the hotel that night or stayed. I didn't care. I eventually landed in Bali and climbed into a bottle for the next month and went offline. With the exception of my dad and work, I didn't even care if I got fired. I wish I could say I enjoyed myself, but it was mostly just drunk. I felt a lot of rage, shame, and hate about how things went down. I kept in touch with Paul about my leave, and after 3 weeks, he asked if I could run back to Tokyo to look after some things. We talked about the new global virus, and I mentioned coming back to Canada to settle things there. As I was hearing rumors of potential lockdowns, I got to Tokyo on March 1st, and it felt good to get back to work, even if it was just a little after hearing lockdowns were coming. Paul mentioned me getting back to Canada, but I said, May, it's only going to be 30 or 60 days. I need some time to plan my next move. 30 to 60 days. Fuck me. I was still in Japan for another year before I got vaccinated, but by this time I didn't really want to go home. My house was rented out, and I was talking to family but refused any info about Jen. On September 21st, I received news. My dad had a heart attack and was doing well, but would need a triple bypass. This surgery is serious, not as serious as it was 40 years ago, but I still want to see him. Just in case, I know when I get home it is going to turn into a shit show, and I really don't want that. I just want to see my folks, and thank Paul for all he has done for me, even as selfish as I was. But I know I'm going to have to see her, and I have no idea how I'm going to feel or think. I am so sorry for the length of this. Even still, I left a lot out. Any advice, tips, or insults would be appreciated. I am flying out in 4 hours and will land in about 24 hours. Update 1. After landing, I went to see my dad. He is looking good and actually looking forward to his surgery. Mom is doing well, but obviously masking concern. I spent almost the first 24 hours by his side, and I think we talked about everything under the sun, but nothing heavy. I don't want to stress him. I told him I am here for him, but I am using this trip to reorganize my life, close some doors, and open some new ones. Booze into him already. We talked for a bit back and forth about my dad's work, and he asked me if I had any contact with Jen, which I said no to. He then informs me that the old man, the boss, wants to see me. But considering my father, it can wait. I know I am in deep, and I may as well get it over with. I have a list of things I need to accomplish this month, and I may as well start knocking things off it. Meeting Jen is one of them. I entered the office for the first time in what seems like forever, many faces. And he does have some good points, I have to admit. He looks at Paul and asks why they should keep me around. All he does is great work. He has saved accounts and acquired many new ones. Plus, we can't find anyone to do the job for the 20% below market salary like we are paying him. WTF. Then Paul and the old man start maniacally laughing, like that bar scene in the Goodfellas movie. The old man wipes away a tear from his eye and tells Paul that's why he's the best VP. I make a good salary, but come on, man, I feel quite slighted. The old man looks at me and leans in. Listen, kid, I know you had some problems with your woman, so let me give you some advice. He says some guy's name. He is quoting. I don't know if I'm remembering word for word, but this is the gist of it. God gives a woman eyebrows and she plucks them out and draws on new ones. God gives a woman a face and she paints a new one over it. God gives her breasts and she buys a push-up water bra. God gives her a form and still she is not satisfied. She buys slim-fitting clothes to change that form. If God himself cannot please her, then how can you, brother? Please don't kill yourself. Well, that kind of blew my mind a bit, I must say. The old man looks at Paul and says, I can trust you to handle this properly. He pauses. Your mother will kill me if I have to fire you. So now it kind of hits me. They are fucking related. Paul and I walk out and I look at him and say, 20%, man, really? He puts his arm around me and says, don't worry about that. I got you covered, Miso. Am I getting fired or disciplined? Oh no, dumbass, you're getting promoted, he says as he puts his arm around me and kisses me on the side of the head. You could have told me that beforehand, you dick. No, it was much funnier this way. I missed you, kid. Now let's go get eased up. It's 8:30 in the morning. Paul, who does that all? I do. You still have a lot to learn about enjoying life. It doesn't surprise me with this guy. Really? What should I expect from someone who got all liquored up before on sake and got into a fist fight with a monkey? He got his ass kicked as well, I might add, at the hot springs in Japan. We did end up getting pissed up. We talked about work and what was going to happen. We talked about Jen, and he advised me that I really should meet her and get closure. He said we both did stupid things, but we are good people. Once I get closure, then I will be able to move forward in my future without an anchor of emotion holding me back. He said once that is resolved, then we can talk about my employment future, what I want to do, and where I want to go. So that was checked off the list. At least I still have a job. Dad is looking good. There is still the matter of Jen, which has been consistently in my thoughts. I unblocked her on Facebook and scrolled through to prepare me for what is to come. I sent a PM and asked if we could meet for dinner sometime soon. We only exchanged pleasantries and are meeting for dinner in the next few days. That will be my next update. Jen and I agreed to meet at a restaurant a few hours after she got off work. Now going into this, I was afraid of two things. That my anger would remain and I would act accordingly, or my love for her would remain and I would act accordingly. I was hoping to find a comfortable median in the gray area. All my plans flew out the window the moment she walked through the door. She looked wonderful. She smiled and walked over, and my stomach was in my throat. I wasn't this nervous when we lost our virginity together. We shared a short, awkward hug, and I could smell my favorite perfume on her. Is she about to love bomb me, or play some emotional tricks? Is she in another relationship and here to show me what I missed? No rings on her finger, not even the one I gave her. We talked about my dad first. And she told me she always checked in on him when she was on shift and assured me a surgeon for the upcoming bypass was one of the best. We kicked around small talk, like her extreme workload during the pandemic and what I experienced being locked down in Tokyo. I was seriously getting ready to crack. I can assure you I was calm and collected on the outside, but falling apart underneath. I told myself I needed this. So did you plan it because of your insecurity, or did you secretly want to punish me for the people I was with when we weren't a couple, Jen? Maybe both. But let me say that any other man who was in my life before we were engaged, I never loved like I loved you. Tim, her ex before me, cheated on me because he always told me that he could never compete with the feelings I had for you. We broke up for that reason. I did not know this, and to be honest, I never felt bad. He cheated. I never wanted you to know I was going to sleep with another man. I thought I could emotionally detach from it, and even if you found out, we could work through it. Like everything we ever experienced before, you thought very wrong. It was probably the most painful thing I've ever experienced. I didn't need you to be perfect or experienced. I just needed you to be mine. All of them, Jen. Every single one could never add up to what I felt with you. But now I'm thinking, was it a real feeling, or the projection of the dream of us that our family wanted? Or the fantasy we expected? It started to get emotional, and Jen excused herself and went to the washroom to collect herself. We were in a good medium-sized restaurant, and only a few tables were occupied. Paul tagged along for some support, as some of you mentioned, and strategically placed himself in the sealed-off lounge. I looked over to get some encouragement or a thumbs up, and he was having a rather animated conversation with two rather attractive ladies, laughing and using hand gestures, the whole 9 yards. He finally looked over and gave me a questioning thumbs up, and I nodded that everything was okay. He smiled, then gave me the middle finger with a smirk, and went back to his extracurricular activities. This effing guy. Seriously. Jen comes back, and we resume. Jen, is there anything you want to ask about that night? Me? It can't be undone. It doesn't matter, Jen. Nothing happened. I wasn't even sure if I could have done it when you called the room. It scared the shit out of me, and I raced down to the lobby, but you were already gone. Me? It doesn't matter. Now I'm not here to rehash the past. I want us to work on moving forward. Jen, can you forgive me? Me? Of course, I can forgive you, and I do forgive you. You are not a horrible person. You just made a horrible series of choices that put us here. It is not all your fault. I should have been more open and understanding of your worries as well. I was going through a cycle of emotions, from love to anger to regret. Part of me wanted to yell at her, and another part of me wanted to take her home and forget this never happened. For the past few weeks, I've been watching these Reddit videos on YouTube, preparing myself for this conversation and seeing these men punishing themselves for what their significant others had done. Much worse damage than the actual cheating. I was determined to not be that simp. I started looking at her with the old man's words running through my mind, painted face, painted nails, and form-fitting dress. Do I even really know her? If this is her outward appearance, is her mind the same? Are all their minds the same? I hardened myself. Jen, what now? Is there anything in the future for us? Me? I want you to remember when we were kids and walking home from the park, that vicious dog that approached us. I got in front of you on instinct to protect you, to save you. The owner called the dog, and it took off just mere seconds, really. But when you were 9, that's pretty scary. Me? All these years later, I stood in front of you, loving you and protecting you from whatever would come at us. But this time, when I stood in front of you, giving you everything I had, you stuck a knife in my back, just like the frog and the scorpion. This statement really hit her like a bolt, and she lowered her head and sobbed a bit. I wasn't finished. I needed to get it all out. Jen, I'm sorry. She took out the ring box and slid it across the table to me. I left it there. Me? I don't want this. I'm pissed off. You think I want to be sitting here with my heart jumping out of my throat and you crying? I want to be home, playing with the baby we would have by now. I can't remember anything said in the next few minutes. She began sobbing and holding her hands to her face. I have said some shitty things in my life, but that one takes the cake. I apologized and said that I went too far. It snapped me out of anger mode. The rest of the conversation calmed down, and after I had, thank you for watching, subscribe for more.